Yeah, so after Esport Worlds, Swift Worlds, I've been off the bike since then.
Okay.
Uh, so yeah, I'm getting a little antsy though. Get back on the bike. I went on like a short run, and then yeah, I went hiking a little bit, just trying to stay a little bit active. The run was a bad idea. Like
I
that
was
would
gonna say that
yeah,
sounds
Johnny
horrible.
yeah, Johnny could yeah, Johnny could advise me. He probably did advise me not to do that. So yeah, my quads have been hurting since then.
Dude, I like running
So
and I like the act of it, but it just yeah, I do it too much because we're like, we can ride for hours and hours and people are like, dude, 30 minutes is a good run. And I'm like, oh, that's more like my warm up. Like that's why you get injured all the time. You just run too much. So are you taking a break just as like a rest before getting ready for next year or
yeah, just taking a mental rest and a physical. Like despite the lack or with the lack of racing, see you, man. Despite the lack of racing and everything, like the intensity was still pretty high
Mhm.
between all the Zwift racing and stuff like that I was trying to do. And I did the Zwift Academy, and I was seeing like the best numbers I'd seen, all setting personal best throughout the year and everything. So that was motivating. Like I was getting better and better and better. So I just kept riding the wave and riding the wave. And yeah, I mean, so since like October of 2019, up until this break I just took, like the only break I'd really had off the bike was like 3 consecutive days off the bike in like right after Johnson City. I forget when that race is, but
Yeah.
so yeah, I was just ready to take a little bit of a break.
Dude, and that's why so for people watching, if you guys don't know Tanner, Tanner's like one of my favorite cyclists in the US because you are a freaking beast, dude. No matter whether you get thrown on a gravel bike, a road race, a crit, now Zwift, which is something we definitely got to get into. Dude, you just throw it down. And I think that being able to have watts is one thing, but you are crafty in every discipline. And then when you started doing the Zwift, the one thing like I was just getting shelled in Zwift races, and I didn't take the time to learn it. And I was curious. I'm like, I wonder how Tanner's going to do in this. And then you make the world's team, and like, it's just amazing,
Yeah.
dude. It's so awesome. Like, what do you? So
Yeah, that
how did that play out with well, yeah, dude, I just looked on road results. You raced for 901 Racing?
yeah, yeah. Buddy Kevin Murphy, who yeah, he lived in Memphis, grew up in Memphis, and he went to Fayetteville. So we were on the University of Arkansas Club Sport cycling team together. So I joined whenever I was a junior in college, was whenever I first joined the club sport team. And then yeah, Kevin was on the team. I think he'd been on it a couple of years, but it seemed like he was the only one on the club that knew what the hell he was doing. Like everyone else was like new to riding. And yeah, Kevin had like raced as a junior and things, and so he was like teaching us the ropes and like telling us about racing. And like for a lot of us, our first race was like crosswinds in Little Rock. We all went, and yeah, we all raced crosswinds, and Kevin was like giving us the breakdown and everything. But yeah, then it moved on, and I kept racing, and then he asked if I wanted to join 901. So yeah, I was on 901 for a year. I forget what year that was. Maybe my senior year of college. I forget.
2015, I want to say.
Yeah, yeah, that would have been
Yeah.
yeah
And
senior year of college.
sorry if there's a delay. I think my internet's kind of slow. I've got it through a satellite and it starts to get slow at night. So that's my bad. The so wait, are you 27?
Yeah, 27.
Dude, your email is Tanner. Well, I won't say what has the number 86 in it. I thought you
I
were
know.
only 4 years younger than me. And I just looked on road results and I was like, wait a minute, what? That's insane, dude. That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah. So that was one of those like auto generated emails, and it happened to be a terrible idea because like I swear like anytime I send a race resume, trying to get on a team or anything, they're like, this dude's way too damn old to be on our team. Is born in '86. So yeah,
Dude,
no, born in '93.
I think that has actually helped me race against you because if I had known you were only 27, I would have been way more intimidated. I think I'm like, oh, Tanner's kind of over the hill too.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my God, dude. I looked through and I was like, oh, and then I looked at the head-to-heads and I'm like, oh, Kevin Gherkins is only 31. Damn, he's still pretty young too. Shoot. So you guys make me feel really old. That's okay. It
Yeah.
motivates me. So 901, what was the first race that you won? Do you remember that?
The first race that I won? Um, Man, that's a good question. I don't know if I know know the answer to that.
Is it collegiate crit? I think
Maybe yeah, yeah. I was gonna guess collegiate race of some sort. I don't know if it's probably in the B's or something like that. Um, yeah, whenever I was racing collegiate, I was trying to like move up as quickly as possible because you had to be, what was it? I was trying to get to Cat A so I could race collegiate nationals because I wanted to race collegiate nationals in my senior year of college, and I wasn't getting you had to be either a CAD 3 on the road or a CAD A like in collegiate to qualify for nationals. And yeah, so I had to kind of play that bit and get the upgrade stuff like that through collegiate and the road to get the upgrade so I could race collegiate nationals. I was like a fish out of water. I probably should not have been in that collegiate nationals race. Like, Grant Kuntz was in there, Brendan Rim, like all these guys that have, they were staples in like collegiate cycling. And I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I was just like, yeah, going all out.
But when you look back, don't you think that was a good experience? Because I'm a big proponent of like people should just upgrade as fast as possible. And there's always the guy who's like, well, I want to wait 5 months because there's a Cat 3 race that I want to win. I'm like, well, do you really want to win that? Or do you want to go race like the fastest people possible? And so I was like trying to I wanted to get Cat 1. Like that was just like, I'm fast tracking. And I got it right before Green Mountain stage race. And Ted King had come back and he raced. And I learned a lot just by watching that dude. I'm like, okay, this dude is the world tour guy coming down to race with us schleps. Let's just see what he does. And like, it was really interesting to watch how he positioned himself. I mean, I didn't even know if he won a stage because obviously super marked, and Green Mountain, there's a ton of really high quality athletes there. I mean, I was holding on for dear life. I think maybe I got 60th. I mean, it was a really good experience though to catch those L's. Just like, yo, dude, you want to race as a Cat 1 at like a big race? There is so much work to be done, and I found that really motivating. But I don't know. What do
Yeah.
you think? Do you think athletes should go? It's probably athlete dependent, but would you more push people along the way, or say stay back and learn how to win more, or maybe it's like a fine balance?
Yeah, I think it's a fine balance because, like, I think if you're trying to get as strong as possible, as quick as possible, like catting up like as quickly as you can, I think it's definitely the route to go. But from a race tactic standpoint, like learning how to race your bike to win, I think at least winning a bike race in each category, and then if you've got the points, move up and stuff like that. Because yeah, I mean, I definitely went the route of cat up as quickly as possible. And it's, at times I had, I guess, what someone would call like stupid power or whatever, where I would race like just stupid shit. I would just be, a break would go up the road like super early, like two guys. I wouldn't have a clue who they were. No one would be chasing, would be going super slow. And I was like, this is boring. Like, what are we doing? And I would try to bridge up solo, and maybe I would make it, maybe I wouldn't, but that's just how I race. And then I'd be fried at the end and not do anything. But, it would work like 1 out of 10 races or whatever, where that break I would get in would
That's
stay
still
to
a
the
good
end. So.
percentage though, and I still haven't learned that lesson of like you're not supposed to go into good.
Yeah, that's probably not exact math there, but it seemed like it maybe.
Well, so we're talking about getting as strong as possible. You hit the best numbers. We just did a podcast with Patrick Wally and Zach Nair, and the topic is why am I riding less and hitting all these PRs? And what do you think they had some things going on because Patrick with a child and Zach working on some other things off of biking have reduced their volume. So what do you think from your standpoint? Why are you hitting all these PRs on Zwift?
Yeah, I guess I was definitely hitting PRs on both. I was hitting PRs outside on the longer duration side of the things. And then I was kind of hitting more like mid-range PRs through Zwift Academy that I did, and yeah, Zwift racing, things like that. And honestly, I think it was just a mixture of things. I don't know that I necessarily say it was writing less per se. I think I started ticking like all the small boxes, like the sleep, the nutrition, the stretching, the foam rolling, like getting balanced on the bike. I've always dealt with like uh, over analyzing pedaling a little bit. Like I overanalyzed it a lot. And
Hmm.
there for a while, I was sitting kind of wonky on the saddle and it would just drive me nuts. I would change my saddle one day, change it the next day, change that saddle the day before a race. I did that like all the time. And I think, yeah, I veered away from that this season. And I was working more on my body as far as like flexibility and mobility, which seemed to pay dividends for me. And I stopped overanalyzing writing and I just was writing. So that seemed to help a lot. It seemed like with PRs and things like that.
What's the gym routine that you're doing? So you're talking flexibility and stretching. Are you also lifting all year? Or I know you lift in the off season or like down period of racing, let's call it. Are you still lifting while racing, or what's kind of your go-to to find that way? Because it is such an unbalanced sport. Doing things off the bike, I think are, once I got older, you haven't experienced this yet, but when I hit like 35, my hips started hurting and I thought it was my bike. And my buddy was like, yo, dude, I hate to tell you, you're kind of old. And I was like, oh my God. And so I had to start doing more stretching, had to do some yoga poses, have to do like muscle activation, just these other little things, like a couple minutes here and there that make the biggest difference. But what kind of things are you doing to help sort of just stay more fluid?
Yeah, I mean, every morning I pretty much have like a go-to routine that I do, starting with mobility work, just like dynamic movements, just kind of waking up the body, and then I'll go into like not purely like static stretching, but I'll do yeah, just again, just kind of going through certain movements to wake up the hamstrings. My hamstrings get super tight, it seems like. So I do that. I do some glute like activation work with the bands, and then ankle mobility too. I feel like for cyclists, ankle mobility gets yeah. I've worked with my coach has been a huge help in this. Like I'm just she's in Australia and we talk all the time, and we've tried to kind of nail this stuff down. So a lot of the work I'm doing is because of things that she's noticed or that we've talked through. So yeah, for me, I mean, I played other sports, before cycling, and I had plenty of broken bones and sprained ankles and things like that. And we did like an ankle dorsiflexion range of motion, and like my two ankles were like completely out of whack. Neither one
Mm.
were close to one another. So we tried to nail that down a little bit, which actually seemed to help sit on the saddle a little bit better because of just that range of motion, at the bottom of the pedal stroke. So yeah, just a little bit of everything. It's crazy how, yeah, it just becomes so individualized, and you can just one little thing and it moves up the chain, and you don't know what's causing it.
Dude, it's nuts. Usually when someone's like, my knee hurts, I'm like, okay, so it's probably not your knee. It's probably either your IT band or something in your calf. It's something pulling something in a weird way. And I'm like, do you foam roll? They're like, no, I don't have time. I'm like, okay, so you need to ride 15 minutes less than and foam roll until this figures it out. And they're like, wow, I can't believe that went away so quickly. And it's just, it is crazy. It's whatever cheesy saying, like the neck bone's connected to the foot bone or whatever, but it's all one chain. You get one thing out of whack and it just sort of somersaults down. Um, what's so tell me about the esports world experience for you, because that's the last big thing you've done. And from, I don't know, talking to Patrick, I was super excited for him of getting asked to be the DS and be involved because he's been in the Zwift world. And I was watching the race and one of the announcers was like, this is pretty cool. These people are all making history. Like, has that hit you really, that you were one of the first people on Team USA for indoor esports Zwifting worlds, where maybe it doesn't seem like a huge deal to you guys that are involved, but like you're going to look back in 15 years when this has been going on, because it's clearly not stopping, and you'd be like, damn, I was on the first team. Like, has that sunk in that like you were on the world's team? I mean, it's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, it it sunk in for sure. Like whenever we were getting the team roster aligned, and Jeff Pierce made the announcement that Patrick was involved, and the kits were going out, and all that stuff was happening. Like it was starting to sink in then. And once the race roster, all the guys that were racing it, and seeing the world tour names and everything like that, and you're like, what the hell am I doing, with these guys? It definitely sunk in then. But yeah, like you said, I think, 10 years down the road or whatever, it'll sink in even more, after the fact.
Well, I loved it too, man, because I think the USA kit is so slick. And you had the one picture on Instagram of you on the trainer or yeah, was it rollers or a trainer? But like you were just in the kit. And I was like, oh, that looks so good on him. And then we were watching the race and we were just in like a chat thing. And of course, Justin, people thought Corey was Justin. So people are like, oh, Justin Williams. Other people are like, no, that's Corey. And someone's like, who's T Ward? And I was like, go Tanner Ward. And then your brother was on there. And so we're like chatting back and forth. And dude, I mean, that finish was absolutely insane. What was like when you guys were going up that last climb? Talk me through that, because how did you know how long was the effort going to be? And it's like the thing I'm sure a lot of people now understand from Zwift, you're not doing a one-off hard effort like coasting in and getting position for a climb. You are going hard and then going really hard. And the guy who won was doing 12 watts a kg at one point, just insane final dig. That what was your strategy like? How, because you were in the mix going into the end, how does that, what are you thinking? I mean, it's got to be hard to piece it all together when you're just eyes have to be almost coming out of your head at that point.
Yeah. So we had like our team race, or a team pre-race meeting and everything, and we kind of sat down with all of us and kind of went over what we thought, how it was going to play out, and who we thought on the team had the best shot at winning. And me and Jaden are more diesels, type riders. I've got some snap, but it's got to be like repetitive and over like a really long race. I don't have like crazy 1 minute power or crazy like 2 minute power, especially for my weight. And with the watts per kilo that the guys were doing, up that final climb, it wasn't in the cards for me, and I knew that. So what Jaden and I were trying to do is try to keep the race glued together as much as we could. Team Canada put in a solid attack. They're pretty late, like within the last 5 or 6K, I think it was, and Jaden did a huge pull getting that back. And then I think Jordan Cheney from Canada also put in another dig, and I helped kind of glue that back together the best I could. And then, yeah, once we hit the base of the climb, I was honestly shelled. Like I didn't have anything left. So I hate to say it, like I was happy to make it to that point. I didn't know what was in store at all. Like the guys are going to be flying. You don't know what's going on with the weight cuts, or it's the first world championships. Like you don't know what's about to happen. So yeah, I was happy to make it to the end and just kind of play a part in the race for sure.
Well, dude, it was awesome. I mean, to see you there and to see the other names and to see people who had fallen off, because some people were like, oh, so-and-so got dropped, so-and-so got dropped. And we're like, oh my, and at one point I was like, shoot, it's hard. It was hard to follow everybody. And I'm like, oh dude, I think those guys got dropped. And then you would see your name pop up. I'm like, oh, he's still in there. I mean, dude, to make it to that point, like you said, being a bigger dude, and it was awesome. It was an incredible performance. Like, hope you're super proud of that. Definitely repped the central US very well for that. And that's one thing, man, like your power is, I always think back to the first time we raced. It actually, no, it wasn't crosswinds when we raced against each other. It was actually when we were on the same team. Everyone was animating it, and I got off just off the front of the group, and you bridged up to me, and I was like, okay, we're about to settle in, and you like gassed it again. And that was the first time that I experienced Tanner Ward's overdrive. And I was like, wow, okay, we're going like warp speed right now. And that's the thing though. I mean, a lot of people get obsessed with, it's really good to hear you say this, because a lot of people get obsessed with their watts per kg chart, and that's a one-off effort. It's not what you can do 3 hours into a race. And it's sometimes hard to have athletes understand how much that matters, because they might say, oh, well, I only have cat 2 watts per kilogram. I'm like, yeah, but you can do that at hour 4. That's way more beneficial than having just a one-off effort. So I think this theme is actually kind of coming up in a few different conversations I've had with people. And I think it's really important for people to hear that, because we're in the world where everybody's just, what's my FTP? And it doesn't make them race ready. It makes them, you get a pat on the back because you feel like you're getting faster, which you technically are, but you're not necessarily getting faster for a bike race. Two very different things. So I think it's good for people to hear that from you. 2018, these are
Yeah,
like
for sure.
2018, you got to race in Belgium. And I want to hear, how did that come about?
Yeah. So that was felt like a whole nother lifetime. So I think my first stint over in Belgium was in 2017. I think
Okay.
whenever I was on OBP,
Mm-hmm.
I think that was 2017. So we raced like the first half of the road season here in the US, and then me, Adam, and Jacob, all three went to Oudenaarde, Belgium, and we raced for 6 weeks while we were there. And we were just jumping in like every kermesse we could. And Adam and Jacob had both been there before, and so they were kind of showing me the ropes, and I was learning, as much as I could. And I think it was like 3 weeks in, 4 weeks in, I won my first kermesse. Like, I got in a break with 4 guys, and then one had a mechanical, another guy crashed or something, and it was me and like Stan de Wolf, and he's now like world tour Lotto Sudal, and me and him, we just rode the two of us, and then I was able to beat him in the sprint at the end. And then not like 3 or 4 days later, I won another kermesse in another four-man break on this like super hard hilly kermesse. I was like, this is absurd. Like, I don't know what's going on, how I'm winning these races over here in Belgium. Cause like all I'd heard is, all the classic stuff we hear about Belgium. Like, you're going over there, you're getting your teeth kicked in, which I did plenty. I got my teeth kicked in, but I just got those 2 results. And then from there, I just proceeded to, reach out to like some Belgian team directors. I was just sending out my resume and got a couple to respond. And then, United Cycling, Johan, he messaged me back, said that they would love to have me. So I, went back and forth a little bit. I was like, am I ready for this? And was talking with my coach, Ernie, at the time. And, he raced at a really high level. And I just decided to go for it. I was like, starting the sport late, it was still back to that, trying to advance as quickly as possible. And I did that through the categories. And I was like, I'm going to go to Belgium. That's where I've got to learn how to race now, and how to race, but also get stronger. And so I took that, and I did that in 2018. Yeah.
What do you think? What are some of the top things that you learned over there that you can apply to U.S. racing? And for people that don't know what a kermesse is, how would you explain what is a kermesse?
Oh, so kermesse is, like, technically speaking, I guess it's a short circuit race somewhere between a crit and a road race lap. So I think it's generally between like 5 and 12 kilometers, something like that. And the races end up being like 2 hours, or wait, I think it's around like a 3-hour race. I forget, depending on the elevation and things, on the duration and the length of the races. And it's just, I almost describe it too as like a Zwift race, but out on the road, because it seems like there's no let up, like that's the thing about racing over there. It seems like, and I tell people this here, here in Little Rock, and some of the local races, is like these kermesses for the Belgians, to me, it seems like they're training races. It's like, they care that they win, but they're trying to get strong from it. And like some of the races here, it'll be very slow and very tactical at times. For me, it drives me nuts. Like, for smaller local races, I'm like, we're all here. We all need to get stronger. Like, if we all just like roll as hard as we can or whatever, it's not tactically the best racing, but as far as getting strong and racing, like, and I think that's why I did okay, over there at the first go round for the Belgian racing and the kermesse racing. Is that was just the mindset that they had too, is just race all out, and in the end, whoever's the strongest wins.
Did you ever do up in, oh man, I'm gonna blank on the name. It used to be 4 or 5 day stage race in Massachusetts called God damn. People up in, I just had a hard time remembering a neighborhood in Rochester, and now I'm like forgetting the races that I used to do. I've been in the South too long. But I don't know why circuit races aren't more popular in the US, because this circuit race had like a stair step, a pretty funky downhill, and then like a couple decent rollers, that it was just enough that it was fast, but it was so hard for 2 hours. And it was like, it was awesome. And these circuit races, they just don't seem to happen. We're either crit or some road races, but I wish there were more circuit races. They are so fun. And a 3 hour, 2.5, 3 hour race is such a good duration. I mean, you actually feel like you went and raced. Whereas,
Yeah.
talking to somebody else who wants to go do USA crits and they're younger and they're like, it kind of sucks to drive around the US for a 1 hour race, or some are an hour and a half. But I don't know. I wish there was more circuit
Yeah.
races here.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, for the younger riders, that are, their aspirations are to make it to Europe or whatever, it's like they can't be racing crits all the time if they want European teams to notice them. And the road races have kind of, there's not many more popping up per se. So the gravel racing seems to be taking a little, it's gone from like no more road races to 150-mile gravel races. So it's kind of like jumped dramatically to that.
So where we left off, this was good. Talking about Belgium, one thing we got off track of, what do you think were some of the things you learned when you were there?
I think one of the biggest things I learned while I was racing there is just like positioning within the field, being ready for like, being ready for anything, over there with the crosswinds and how narrow the roads were and everything. You just had to almost be on alert, like at all times, and not knowing the courses over there. And like I raced a bunch of the interclubs Tour de Liège, Tour de Namur, which are like 5-day stage races with the continental Belgian teams. And a lot of those guys have raced those since they were juniors. They've been racing them for forever. And I had no idea what I was racing. And like, there wasn't much of a race book, so it's like, you just had to be up front and like just attentive at all times. And so that's definitely helped. Like here in the U.S., just always being ready to go with something. It's not quite as necessary. It doesn't seem like here in the U.S. Since the roads are so wide and everything. Like you can generally, you can generally cover about anything. Just at least with the bigger stage races with the open courses. Like it's kind of funny because some of the smaller races here, with the one lane, some, with the yellow line roll, sometimes you get boxed in or whatever, and you can't do anything. Like I think that happened at Tora North Georgia, I think, on one of those early days. I don't remember if you got up the road or one of the second or third place got up the road. I like couldn't do anything for the first 2 miles because everyone was just chilling. So
Okay. Yeah, I was surprised at Joe Martin how wide the roads were. I was like, this is really there. I kind of didn't like that because of that reason. Like there was no sneaking away from the front. It was just like as much space as you could even think. It was like a football field. It was kind of crazy.
yeah,
But yeah, so positioning is huge, and I think that's one thing that somebody that just asked me about that newer rider, they got boxed in for a sprint, and we're like, oh, the only thing I could have done was gone over the yellow line. I'm like, well, you need to think before that. You need to be in a position always able to cover something, and that's something that you do really well. I mean, that definitely shows your skill set. You have your like Tanner's always in the mix, and you are ready to animate at the right time. So I think that's awesome. Did you have any specific training that you did going over there knowing that, okay, these are going to be 2 hour races, full gas? Did you change anything? Do you remember heading over to Belgium?
So the first stint I did over there in 2017, the 6 weeks I did over there, those were the Kermesse races that were the 2 to 3 hour mark. So we didn't really change anything. Just kind of went over there and raced and trained like I normally would. Now, whenever I spent the full team or the full season over there in 2018, I met with my coaches before because we knew that's where I was going. And those races were a lot longer. Those were your 80 to 100-mile road race stages, and you'd have 4 or 5 of them. Like, they didn't do crits, when they're
Mm-hmm.
5-day stage races. So it's road race after road race after road race. And
Heaven.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I thought that originally, and then you get over there and you're like, maybe not. If you're on a bad day, then it's the opposite. It's hell for 5 days. But yeah, I met with my coaches at that time and kind of went over, like, I knew I had to bump up my volume. I knew what, the guys over there training, racing full time pretty much. And I was still trying to float a part-time job at that time and train, and I was just trying to train as much as possible. But long story short on that, I ended up changing coaches like in the middle of the season whenever I was in Belgium, like in March or April, is when I changed to the current coach I'm with. And so I kind of, in hindsight, I wish I would have done that, at the start of the off season, some October, November, because I kind of got into, like, maybe didn't have the right base laid out for the build that my new coach was giving me. So I almost felt like I was always in a hole whenever I was over there, because I was racing a lot, and then the racing was super difficult, and then my training was harder than it had ever been. And my base wasn't probably where it needed to be.
Who is your current coach then, so we can give them a shout out?
Yeah, so my current coach is Natalie Kabish, and she works with Kevin Polton. They're like PowerHouse Cycling out of Australia, in Sydney.
Dude, that's so funny. I might have just come across them when I was Googling different terms, and somebody one time was like, "Oh, dude, you're Houser. You should have used the name PowerHouse." And I was like, "I wonder if anyone ever used the name PowerHouse." And I just saw their thing when I Googled who's doing PowerHouse cycling. That is so funny. What do you think? What was Natalie putting on your calendar for training that was so difficult that you just hadn't experienced before? Or was it,
Yeah, I think it was the sheer volume, as well as just the way it was laid out, right? So, like, the way she had me training and the way I train now, and I've heard you talk about it as well, like in some of your other podcasts and things, is like doing a big block of endurance or tempo and then doing VO2 at the end of that ride. You're not doing it at the beginning, and you're doing it in a fatigue state. And there was a lot of stuff like that, and then it was just the accumulation of fatigue, like, over time, from one, building a three-day hard block of training, and then just trying to get through it like that. And that, it was just a big shock to the system, I think, training like that while racing.
It's such a fine balance, and it's like really, it's great to do. I mean, when you're riding 3 hours and you're like, oh my God, how am I even going to be able to do VO2 max stuff correctly? And it's surprising what we can do. Like, on paper, it looks awful, and maybe you don't do it as well the first time, or you don't get through the session the second time, and eventually the third time you nail it or whatever. But it's tough, but it does, doing those rides kilojoules deep. I don't think a lot of people do it. And that's the biggest thing that I think that's one of the only reasons at times when, for like gravel stuff, I've been able to be competitive, because I look at some of these athletes and I'm like, this person is definitely a more accomplished cyclist than I am. So I got to figure out, how can I even try and ride with them when we're 4 hours into a ride? Like, they're just stronger than me watt per watt. Like, I got to figure something out. I don't know. I think those are definitely beneficial sessions. Can't do them all the time because you just get tired. Like you said, it's a big blast to the system, but there's something to them. Talking about Europe, and what do you think for younger cyclists? Like, and dude, I'm laughing still that you're 27. So this is going to be a general question. Then I'm going to get a question based on where you want to go. But what do you think? What's the current state of things? I mean, things have really changed up a lot. And if you're a road cyclist and you're 20 years old in the US, what do you think somebody should do? And you've kind of share whatever you want to share. Like, I know you've gone through a lot of conversations with different people of you can go win a lot of crits, but that just winning crits doesn't get European teams excited because that's not what they're doing. What do you think people should do, and what are you doing? What's your game plan?
Yeah, man.
Sorry to put you on the
With me
spot.
starting late. No, you're good. It's not. It's something I think about all the time. It's like I feel like I could spend a whole hour, talking about this particular topic. And starting late in the sport, I went the route of going to Europe and just kind of going in the deep end and trying to do it that way. And I think if you're a younger rider, and you're starting to see it with a lot of them, kind of taking the step, Hagens Berman, Action Hagens Berman's like the team to be on, right? If you're under 23 and you're trying to go to the World Tour, and they only carry so many spots, but the U.S. has a number of good riders, so you're starting to see some of them go over to like smaller continental European teams, just to get the experience and the miles like underneath their legs when racing over in Europe. Like just the sheer amount of races, and then the fact that they do primarily road races of big distances. And just with how close all the racing is, that's the other thing geographically. Like, we're at a disadvantage here in the U.S. Like, if we could shrink the U.S. down and have everyone like within five hours, where at all times, like all the fast guys were there, then it could be a different story. But yeah, it's just
it's crazy. I mean,
cards.
It's it was my second season, got my Cat 1, did that race with Ted King. The next year I was out in Boulder. My coach was with Fast Cat, and Frank Overton looked at me and he was like, "Yo, dude, you trying to go pro?" And I was 27. And I'm like, "Well, I think it's a little late." And he's like, "Well, you're on the edge." And I'm like, "Dude, I've only been riding 3 years. Like, I have no like career volume to really be building off of." And he said, "Well, let me tell you this. If you want to have any shot, you need to not sell medical devices. You need to be in your car and be at every race all over the place." And it was really it was one of those things that I look back on. I have no regrets. Like, the only regret I have is one of my teammates eventually got to go race for a Conti team in France for 2 years, which I think would have been really cool. But, I was really torn. I was like, okay, so I'm building this career thing. I just started this new, it's a hobby, but I was addicted to it. So I'm like, is this more than a hobby? Where is it going? And trying to weigh that, do I give everything up that I have started to try and drive around? And my biggest thing was a lot of the races then, the NRC, when it was called NRC, it did have road races, but it was kind of hitting that transition point where crits were the thing. And I hated doing crits, and I didn't do well at them. Like, I'm just not a good crit rider against better people. I'm timid. I don't corner. Like, I need an 80, 100-mile road race. So I'm like, that I was in the same boat of, and really, I don't think I even believed in myself of having a chance. I was like, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, do the regional thing. And I think that's the unfortunate thing about the U.S. Even a guy reached out to me. His son is young and talented, but there's crits for him to go to. If he wants to go to Europe, I'm almost like, dude, he needs to go and get a top 10 at Belgian waffle ride. That's going to get someone's attention. I think gravel, because of the fact that you're doing distances similar to European racing, you're going to race against people like Colin Strickland, Stetina, friggin' even guys like Eric Marcotte that everybody knows in the road race scene. You're going to be putting elbows up with these guys. And if you can get a good performance done, I'm not, obviously, I don't know, I'm not a pro team manager, but if I saw that versus someone winning a crit, to me, a crit wouldn't do anything for their resume. I don't know. It's a tough spot, I guess, if you're in the U.S. Any other thoughts on that? What would you say?
Yeah, it's a real tough spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a real tough spot. I mean, I spoke with a Continental team director, about next season. And right now in the U.S., there's with COVID that throws a whole wrench into things, not knowing what the U.S. calendar is going to look like and stuff like that. But there's just not much of a reason, or as far as the races you get into, to be for teams to want to be Continental. So if you're not already a Continental team, there's not much of an incentive, it seems like, for elite teams to want to go continental and to bolster, the U.S. teams there, which if there's that many teams, it would promote, maybe more stage races, more road races, things like that. So yeah, it just seems like there's not enough incentive there for the U.S. teams and to find the sponsors to get to these big races. Like you look at what Colin Strickland's doing, stuff like that. That seems to be the route for, more and more U.S. guys if they want to stay here. Now, if you want to make it to Europe, and that's been my ultimate dream, is to be racing in Europe at, the spring classic, stuff like that. That's where I would see myself if I were to try to pick a selection of races. Like that's where I would want to be. And so it's hard to get that opportunity, obviously, and you've got to make a name for yourself, and the best way to make a name for yourself right now is just in Europe, it seems like.
Yeah. So is that your goal still, get over there? Like, do you have a timeline of where you're trying to be at, or is it just take it season by season, try and get the best results at what races you can go to, or how do you look at that?
Yeah, it's I don't like putting timelines on things, especially for something that it's, I truly enjoy. I enjoy the process, and I think that's why I've stuck with cycling for so long. And that's why I think I've had personal best even through this, this COVID season with the lack of racing and everything. I like the process. And maybe that comes from other sports and gym background and just being able to measure progress. So yeah, I don't know. Originally I did have a timeline that I was going to race 2020 season and then make a decision after this season, but I'm not gonna I'm not gonna end things like this. So yeah, I'm gonna race next year and then see what happens in the 2021 season, and then make a judgment call from there. Because right now, just working part time and training like I am, it's looks all good on the surface on Instagram and stuff like that, but it's you can only do that for so long, I feel like.
It's well, everybody's highlight reel. Yeah. Hey, are you at work? Do you have to go? I don't want to hold you up if you got to get inside.
No, you're good. I pulled off just like near work, but yeah,
Okay.
you're good.
So I think that bears another question, because it's like when people say, do you pivot? And I've had a couple other people mention, like, it's actually been great that people have been getting something from these podcasts, either thinking that they want to leave like a 9-to-5 career and really focus more on a passion. Other people saying, hey, maybe I want to become involved in the cycling industry somehow, and they want cycling in their life. Like, I look at it as, okay, Colin Strickland, I love what he had done, and he's doing his own thing, and he's making a great living doing what he's doing. Seems happy doing it. There's like a different type of pro now, and it's not necessarily UCI pro. And I think if people want to find their niche and their way to do it, and social media is one thing, and it's like, would you consider, do you want to be a professional within cycling, or is it only UCI pro? Because dude, if you're if you're only 27, I mean, everybody always told me that. So I started when I was 26. So I was like getting into my legs probably at like getting good results like 28, 29. And a guy was like, oh, well, since you started so late, your best years will be when you're 33. I'm almost 39, and this is definitely my best year. And I plan to be my fastest at 40, no doubt. And you're only 27, dude. And you've been riding for what, 8 years now? Like, when you're in 3 years, you're going to be crushing. So like, I hope you don't give up on finding a way to make this. I mean, you can make a career in cycling. It just depends if you only want it to be a UCI road, or do you want to be like, I mean, dude, you're a killer. There's definitely a road for you.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, what's your thought on that?
I know. I want to stay in the sport. I love the sport, I honestly do. I love riding. I love the community. I love everything about cycling. It's just, trying to, like I said, my ultimate goal is to get to Europe and to race over there. It's super difficult. It sounds good on the surface, like go over there, race, make a name for yourself. But, you can go over there and get your teeth kicked in for sure. And those belts, like, you never know what's going to happen. So, yeah, I mean, just to swing it back to like Colin, he had the opportunity with EF, and
Mm-hmm.
he weighed out his pros and cons and stuck with the decision to stay doing what he was doing. And so that is a tough decision. I don't have a decision like that to make or anything, but right now, like, my eyes are still in Europe. And then if that doesn't work out, I still want to be involved in the sport. And I do like I have some issues with the gravel racing scene, just as far as registration, things like that seems to be going on. I don't like how some of the selections are made, but it is what it is. I just think, like, if all the best gravel racers are there, then that's good for the sport. It's good for the community stuff too, to have everyone there, but there's definitely some guys getting left out if you don't have. I don't know what the criteria is. I don't know anything about all that stuff, but I don't like the way that's going. But it does seem to be the route that riders can take if you're not doing the UCI Continental route anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree 100%. And I remember Dieter Drake put on Tour Battenkill, and people used to, really give him a hard time about the price. Back then it was like $100, which was a lot for a road race, but it was the largest one-day road race in North America. I can only imagine the logistics that the guy had to do. And I was like, hey man, if people don't want to go do this race, don't do the race. This is what he's charging. If you want to go, all the best guys are there. This is the race in the Northeast. Like, show up or just be quiet. And so I personally, I don't like how these gravel races close. It's like a race to the registration. I'm like, are we racing to get in the race? Like, it's kind of weird. But at the same time, I understand they're running a business. They want to have X amount of riders. They want to fill those spots, and that's how they're going to do it. But it is like, I definitely had major FOMO. I haven't been able to get into DK, and now I'm a little disenfranchised by it. It was incredible what Colin got to do there. And I'm like, God, I just wish I could have at least towed the line and seen what I could have done. But, I guess it's a different way of, I wish I could have been 29 and towed the line in a European race. Just my life didn't take me down that journey. So it is what it is. Make the most of it either way. But I know what you mean. It's a different scene, and I like gravel, but road is my thing. And I'm actually, I think the guy who mentored me will have a heart attack if he hears me say that I really enjoy like this. It's not a resurgence, this surge of like Gran Fondo series. And it's sort of like getting rid of categories. And it's kind of got the gravel aspect of everyone can race together, and people are showing up ready to race. And I'm like, you know what? Shoot, I don't care if it's a USA cycling event. If people are like we did Emmett Smith, that was hard as hell. And hey, it's a Gran Fondo with a band and food and a lot of people who aren't racing, but those that show up, they're ready to go. And if it's a way that we can just get all the best people together and have who's the best on July 11th in Dallas, Texas, let's do it. So I'm curious to see where everything kind of goes and what it lends to people trying to make it to Europe. And we'll see.
Yeah.
So
I mean, sponsors and all that, they want to see impressions and people's eyes on product and, all the business model. And you go to a crit, a local crit or something put on by USAC, and there might be, you'd be lucky to have 50 spectators there, it seems like, on most of them. Then you go to Gran Fondo, everyone's there to ride themselves. And so that's kind of the same thing between that and gravel racing. You look at triathlon, where all the non-pros are there to race as well. So there's that kind of format seems to be what's needed a little. But,
yeah, it is. What at a Kermesse in Belgium, is there a good crowd there, or is it like a US crit?
There's a pretty solid crowd at all the kermesses, and that's just because of the culture. I feel like, they shut
Yeah.
down the restaurants or they leave the restaurants open on the course, but some of the other businesses will seem to close down, or they might not close down, but they're all outside watching the race, drinking beer, betting on the race,
Hmm.
just kind of taking in the day and stuff like that. So,
I couldn't believe when I went over there for
yeah.
school, the lady that had the Airbnb that I stayed at, she's like, "So, do you like Gilbert?" And I was like, "Wait, you know cyclists?" She's like, "You're in Belgium now. We all know all the cyclists." And I was like, it was such a culture shock. I did not see that coming at all. It's pretty awesome. Um, so are you doing First Internet next year? Or are you still trying to figure out what's going on because of COVID and maybe other opportunities, or do you have plans set in stone yet?
Yeah, I'm doing First Internet again next year. The guys are great. The support's been awesome. Even
Mhm.
through the uncertain times of this season that we just went through. Yeah, so there's again with the UCI Continental thing. There's Tour Utah, and that's really the only advantage of being on a Continental team. So yeah, I reached out to Hincappy, because they were having a primarily European campaign for
Mhm.
2021, and they were trying to do it for this season, and then they ended up, shutting the doors or folding for next year, and they said that they'll hopefully maybe be back, in their Instagram post that they might be back next
Mhm.
season, but who knows? And so, yeah, once that news was made, I kind of just, set my eyes on First Internet, and I tried the Zwift Academy. I did give that a go, and that the finalists for that'll be picked. I think Sunday or something, and that rider that it's 5 guys competing and 5 women competing, and yeah, the men's rider goes to Alpecin Phoenix with Matthew Vanderpool's team, and then the women's winner goes to Canyon SRAM. So I
So you
was
have that race this weekend?
go ahead. No. So I got the email last week that I was no longer in the hunt.
Oh,
So I was in the hunt for a while, and had to submit some stuff to them because they had narrowed it down to a selection of I don't know how many it was, but yeah, just last week I think it was. I got the email saying that I didn't make the cut, and
damn.
then I think a day later they made the announcement on who the riders were, and yeah, it's stacked for sure. It was disappointing for sure that whole day. I was pretty bummed, but yeah, just
Hey
gotta move
man,
on with
keep
it. It was a
keep
great experience.
yeah, dude, keep going. I mean, I'm still like I wish I had it recorded when I opened up road results. I was like, wait a minute, Tanner's 27? Wait a minute. I like the world stopped for a second. Dude, I'm so pumped for you. Like that this is yeah, dude, something amazing is going to happen. And First Internet's such a ridiculous squad. You guys are, I think everybody, I'm not the only one that refers to you guys are like the pro team that just doesn't have the pro license. Like it's just hit squad. And
Yeah.
especially, I was really glad. I mean, I didn't really last year. Um, well, this year didn't obviously happen really. But when Stephen Bassett left, I was like, well, thank God they don't need him on the team too with you, Johnny, Tanner. I don't know the other guys over there. I first raced against them probably 5 years ago in Pittsburgh in a crit, and it was a big crit. It was maybe 61 twos, but I got off the front with 3 of their teammates, the older guy, and then Skorka and somebody else. And I was like, well, this is not going to end well. And they just beat me
Yeah.
up. It was pretty brutal. So, well, man, something
Yeah.
awesome is going to happen. And let's get a plug too. So, Natural State Cadence. Do you have a site, or are you doing like Instagram as the website?
I've got a website, naturalstatecadence.com, and then I've got the Instagram page, and that's somewhat lacking, kind of like my personal page. But between my brother and my brother's helping out with it a little bit on writing some posts and things like that. So, but yeah, between the two of us, we're trying
Cool.
to keep it up to date.
Yeah, so you guys are now coaching with going back to your old stomping grounds, Arkansas, which is exciting to have that whole crew of people. How many people are on the collegiate team there around?
And Yeah, I want to say it's between 10 and 20.
Okay.
There's a whole lot more recreational cyclists that they try to convert to get
Mhm.
into racing. And so, yeah, it's just, it's difficult for the club sport side, because they're always going through presidents are changing, leadership within the club is changing. So it's hard for it to move past where it is, it seems like, but, yeah, they've done well. They've gotten on some sponsors and things like that, and got
Cool.
some good riders and things like that. So yeah,
And
just
they
trying to
have
give
that.
back and give.
They've got that gravel race. Sorry to cut you off. It's is it usually in the spring that they put on?
So it was going to be the first one was going to be, I believe my brother was scheduling it out, and yeah, I want to say it was early spring. I want to
I
say
think so because I remember,
because it.
and that makes sense now because I was talking to the person. I didn't know who ran their account, and it might have been your brother because I'm like, oh, this person's really nice. And like, I almost feel like I know them, but it probably was. I think it was because I had made the comment like, well, I'm a fair weather cyclist now, being old, and I was like, if it's not like mid south gravel, maybe I'll be out there, but if it's raining and cold, I'm probably gonna leave. So yeah, well, people make sure to follow Natural State Cadence. I still love that name and the logo. It's perfect for Arkansas. And hit up Tanner with some training questions. And I don't know, anything else you want to tell the people?
I just keep pushing pedals. Keep
There you
keep
go, dude.
keep going. It's
I
like, yeah,
We'll have to have a follow-up podcast, and we'll see. We'll get some a couple other people maybe of like just talking about where cycling's going, maybe as the year goes on, because I'm just so curious about everyone's avenue and how, like, I always look at Andy Chastain as a huge like motivation of how he's really taken his personal branding into professionalism, and like he's so tied into cycling, obviously not as a pro, but is just, working with incredible brands. I think there's so many opportunities. I mean, cycling's a huge industry, and a guy one time told me, oh, I didn't get into cycling to make money. And I'm like, well, that's fine if that's your choice, but like there's a lot of people making a lot of money in cycling. I think as cyclists, we're somehow the message is like, oh, if you want to be a cyclist, you got to be poor. Well, okay, if you want to be a domestic pro, you don't get paid a lot, but you can figure out other ways, like vegan cyclists. The dude's a cat 3 and making tons of money and doing all these videos and stuff like that. I just think like I hope that the conversation grows for people that want to be involved. Like there's ways to have cycling in your life more than I think we really think. And there's ways to feed yourself with it. And I don't know, we should get another conversation going with that down the road. I think he maybe got like Purvis too, because he's got a series. He
yeah.
finally got his camera and he wants to start doing a YouTube series. So, and he's just a funny dude. So, well, dude, I appreciate your time. Sorry again about last night. That was embarrassing, but thanks for getting on before work, and hopefully we cross paths. What's last question? Well, I guess there's really no races scheduled. I'll see you at some road race one of these days.
Yeah, see it some road race, or yeah, come on over to Arkansas and maybe me, you, Johnny can do a little training camp or something like that.
Dude, I actually just talked about that. I want to get in some video series, and then that's when he was like, "Hey, I got this camera. I don't want to blow up his spot and say what he was talking about, but we'll cross paths."
Cool.
All right, man. Thanks, Tanner. I'll
All
talk
right.
to you soon, dude.
All right. See ya.